She grew up in a small, crowded apartment, the kind where the walls seemed to hold the weight of every sound around them. Her mother worked long hours as a cleaner, often coming home tired, arms sore from scrubbing floors and carrying heavy buckets. Despite the exhaustion, her mother always carried a warm smile, one that hid her fatigue but radiated love and care for her daughter. The girl was quiet, observant, and curious, often spending hours watching her mother work, learning about discipline, patience, and the value of hard work before she even understood those words. Their life was simple. Money was always tight, and luxuries were rare. They didn't have the newest gadgets, the fancy clothes, or the latest toys. Instead, they had each other, a few worn books, and an old piano that had been passed down through the family. The piano was not new either. Its keys were chipped in places, the wood scratched, and sometimes it would produce a sound that didn't quite belong. But to her, it was magical. She remembered the first time she touched the keys. It felt like electricity ran through her fingers, as if the piano had been waiting for her touch all along. She would sit for hours, pressing keys carefully at first, learning the feeling of each note. She had no lessons, no teacher, but her ears were sharp. She listened to the radio, to her mother humming songs while cleaning, to the faint melodies coming from other apartments, and tried to replicate them on her piano. Some notes sounded wrong, some rhythms were awkward, but she didn't care. She was learning, and each day, she felt herself getting a little better. Her mother noticed her dedication. Sometimes, after a long day of work, her mother would find her sitting at the piano, fingers dancing across the keys with a focus that amazed her. She didn't scold her for practicing too late or for spending so much time at the instrument. Instead, she would smile softly and leave her to it, understanding that something special was growing inside her child. She would often whisper words of encouragement when she thought no one was listening, praising her for sticking to something so beautiful despite the challenges of their daily life. Life in their apartment building was full of small adventures. There were children running in the hallways, neighbors chatting on balconies, and the occasional street musician playing outside their window. These sounds became a backdrop to her life, and she began to weave them into her music. A creaking floorboard became a drumbeat, a passing horn a trumpet note, a neighbor's laughter a melody. She created her own symphony from the ordinary noises around her, making the world feel alive in a way most people didn't notice. School was another part of her life where she felt both normal and extraordinary. She liked learning, though she didn't always have the supplies she needed. She borrowed notebooks, used pencils until they were too short, and treasured the few books she could call her own. Her teachers noticed her quiet intelligence and her creative mind, though they did not yet understand the depth of her musical talent. She would sometimes doodle in the margins of her notebooks, little notes and symbols, almost like music but in a language only she understood. Evenings were her favorite time of day. When the apartment quieted down and her mother had finished her work, she would sit at the piano and lose herself in the sound. The music gave her a sense of freedom she couldn't find anywhere else. It was her secret world, a place where she could dream bigger than her surroundings, a place where the limitations of money and space didn't exist. Her imagination would soar, creating stories and emotions through the keys, turning sadness into gentle notes, joy into fast, playful rhythms, and curiosity into wandering melodies. Her friends from school sometimes visited her apartment and would sit quietly, watching her play. They didn't always understand what she was doing, but they could feel the emotion in the music. It was not perfect, not polished, but it was real and alive. Some would clap softly when she finished a piece. Others would just smile, mesmerized by how someone so young could create something so moving. She didn't play for attention. She played because it made her heart feel full, because it was a part of her that had to be expressed. Her weekends were often spent helping her mother clean offices or homes, carrying supplies, scrubbing floors, and dusting furniture. She learned the importance of hard work early on, and it didn't make her resentful. Instead, it gave her perspective, a sense of gratitude for what she had, and a drive to make the most of her talent. After long days, when she finally returned home, she would collapse at the piano, letting the day's fatigue melt away in the music she created. The piano became a place of rest, of joy, and of escape from the world's demands. Sometimes, she would imagine a life where she could play in grand concert halls, where people would listen and be moved by her music. These were dreams that felt both distant and necessary. She didn't know how she would reach that life, but she believed in it with all her heart. Every note she played, every melody she composed, was a step closer to that dream. She was determined, even when the world seemed indifferent to her gift. Her mother often worried about the challenges ahead. She knew talent alone might not be enough to overcome the obstacles of their financial situation. She wanted her daughter to have every opportunity, but she also understood that the path would not be easy. Despite the worries, she supported her quietly, making small sacrifices so her daughter could have moments with the piano, saving a little money to repair keys, or simply allowing her to practice without interruption. Her love was unwavering, a silent force that gave the girl confidence and strength. Neighbors began to notice her playing as well. The sound of her piano often drifted through the hallways and outside the windows. People would stop and listen, caught by the emotion in her music. It was unusual, this level of expression coming from such a young girl, and word began to spread. Some visitors would leave small notes of encouragement. Others would ask to hear her play again. Slowly, the world outside her apartment began to recognize that something remarkable was happening behind those modest walls. As the seasons changed, so did her skills. What began as tentative explorations of keys grew into structured melodies, more complex pieces, and eventually compositions that seemed to tell stories on their own. Her fingers became agile, her ears more discerning, and her confidence blossomed. She started to experiment with different genres, blending classical pieces with contemporary sounds, creating something uniquely hers. Every mistake became a lesson, every triumph a step forward. Her dedication never wavered, even when the days were hard and the world seemed unaware of her gift. She kept her dreams alive through perseverance, imagination, and the unwavering support of her mother. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a friend, a teacher, and a guide. Each note she played carried a part of her story, the story of a girl from humble beginnings, a girl who found her voice in a world that had yet to recognize her. This was only the beginning, the first chapter of a journey that would soon take her beyond the walls of her small apartment, beyond the life she had always known, and into a world where her music could be heard and cherished by many. And so, day by day, she continued to play, to dream, and to grow, unaware that the simple act of hitting the piano keys would one day change her life forever. Her story was quietly unfolding, like a melody waiting to be discovered, and the world had no idea that a future filled with recognition, music, and extraordinary opportunity was quietly being written in the small notes of her piano practice as she grew older. Her skill on the piano became more noticeable, though still quiet, hidden in the corners of her small apartment. Every day after school, she would rush home, leaving behind the chatter of classmates and the pressures of lessons that sometimes felt overwhelming. She didn't need anyone to guide her when she sat at the piano. Her fingers seemed to remember the notes themselves, and her mind would fill with melodies that she had never heard before. There was an almost magical quality to the way she played, as if the instrument itself responded to her thoughts and feelings. Her mother watched with a mix of pride and quiet worry. She knew her daughter's talent was extraordinary, yet she also understood the challenges ahead. Money was always tight, and the world outside was not kind to those with talent but no connections. Still, she encouraged her daughter, bringing her small gifts when she could. A new sheet of music paper, a worn music book found at a second-hand store, a pencil with an eraser, and reminding her to never give up. Her support, though simple, became the backbone of her daughter's confidence. It wasn't long before her musical ability began to attract attention beyond her family. A neighbor, an elderly woman who had once been a music teacher, heard her playing through the thin walls one afternoon. She knocked gently on the door and watched from a distance, astonished at the skill and emotion she saw in the girl. The woman offered small pieces of advice at first, suggesting finger positions or different ways to approach a difficult piece. The girl accepted them eagerly, absorbing every word as if it were treasure. She didn't need formal lessons, but the guidance helped refine her talent, giving her music more depth and complexity. School was also becoming a place where her talent began to stand out. During music classes, she would be asked to perform in front of the class or accompany other students during singing exercises. Even without proper training, her performances were remarkable. Teachers began to whisper about the girl from the apartment above the cleaner's supply store. While she didn't always understand the attention, she knew it felt different when her music moved others. Some classmates were inspired, some curious, and a few even jealous, but she remained focused, never letting praise or criticism divert her from the joy of playing. At home, life remained simple and full of routine, but the piano began to become a center of small celebrations. Her mother, despite exhaustion from long work hours, would sometimes stop and listen quietly, eyes glistening with emotion. It became a ritual. After the chores were done, after dinner was prepared and dishes washed, the piano would call to her daughter, and for an hour or more she would play. The music carried the weight of her day, the laughter of school, the worries of her family, and the dreams she nurtured silently. It became a safe space, a place where she could be entirely herself without judgment. She started experimenting more, trying to replicate famous pieces she had heard on the radio or seen on television. She would rewind songs over and over in her mind, translating them onto the piano, sometimes hitting wrong notes but correcting them by listening carefully. Over time, she began to compose her own pieces, short melodies at first, then more elaborate arrangements. Each composition reflected a part of her life. The excitement of small victories, the tension of chores and responsibility, the quiet wonder of seeing something beautiful in the simplest things. Music became her language, her way of expressing emotions she didn't always have words for. Sometimes, she would venture outside the apartment, taking her piano exercises into the open spaces of their neighborhood. Sitting in the small park with her portable keyboard, she would play softly, her eyes closed, lost in the rhythm of her thoughts. Passers-by would pause, some smiling, some stopping entirely, as if the music had caught them by surprise. Children would gather, listening in silence, and even adults would tilt their heads, drawn by the unexpected beauty emerging from such a young performer. She never sought attention, but slowly, she began to understand that her music had the power to reach people beyond her apartment walls. One afternoon, a local community center held a small talent event for children in the neighborhood. At first, she hesitated to participate, unsure of herself and nervous about being judged. Her mother encouraged her gently, reminding her that the world deserved to hear what she had to offer. She reluctantly agreed, carrying her music sheets and small keyboard to the center. When her turn came, she approached the piano, hands trembling slightly. But as soon as her fingers touched the keys, all fear melted away. The music flowed naturally, effortlessly, capturing the attention of everyone in the room. She played with emotion, with understanding, with a depth that seemed far beyond her years. The audience was mesmerized, some holding their breath, others leaning forward, unable to look away. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, then a wave of applause. Her heart raced, and for the first time, she felt the possibility of something beyond her small apartment, a world that could recognize her talent. After the performance, a few local music teachers approached her, offering encouragement and guidance. One even suggested she take lessons with a more experienced instructor to help refine her technique. She listened carefully, considering the advice. It was an opportunity she had never imagined, and for the first time, the idea of a future in music felt real, not just a dream. Her mother agreed to support her, rearranging her work schedule to make it possible, knowing that this could be the moment that changed everything. Even as opportunities began to appear, life was not without its challenges. Sometimes, her mother could not afford extra lessons, or her schedule conflicted with practice time. There were moments of frustration, times when the piano seemed impossible to master, when the melodies in her mind did not come out the way she wanted. But she refused to give up. Each obstacle became a lesson in patience, resilience, and determination. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Hard work, persistence, and belief in herself were equally important. As she continued to grow, her music began to take on new forms. She experimented with blending classical pieces with contemporary sounds, creating unique compositions that reflected both her imagination and the world around her. She studied the music of famous pianists, imitating styles, but always adding her personal touch. Her compositions became more sophisticated, and she started to write them down meticulously, creating small collections of music that she dreamed would one day be performed by others. Each piece was a reflection of her life, its struggles, joys, and hopes. Her family began to notice changes too. Her mother, proud of every small achievement, would hang her compositions on the wall, framing them as if they were works of art. The neighbors started to take more interest, sometimes stopping by to listen, offering words of encouragement. Her father, who visited occasionally, expressed quiet pride, amazed at the talent emerging from a home so humble. The recognition, though modest, fueled her desire to continue, to explore her potential, and to push herself beyond the limits she had once imagined. By now, her reputation in the neighborhood had grown. People would comment on the music they heard drifting from her apartment or the park. Occasionally, a stranger would ask if she was taking lessons or performing anywhere. She smiled politely, unsure of how to explain that she taught herself, that her mother had given her the support she needed, and that her dream was just beginning to take shape. Yet, with each note she played, she felt the power of music to connect people, to express what words could not, and to open doors she had never thought possible. Late at night, when the world was quiet and the apartment was dark except for the faint glow of a single lamp, she would sit at the piano and reflect on her journey. She thought about her mother, her sacrifices, and the simple life they led. She thought about her dreams, both fragile and powerful, and about the small victories that had brought her this far. She understood that her journey was just beginning and that the piano, the melodies, and the music were more than instruments. They were her path to a future she had only dared to imagine. Even in those moments of solitude, she knew she was ready for what was coming. She had practiced, learned, and grown not just as a pianist but as a person. She had developed patience, resilience, and a love for creating beauty in the world. The music she played carried her emotions, her struggles, and her dreams. It was her voice, and it had already begun to be heard, quietly at first, but with a clarity that could not be ignored. And somewhere, in the near future, she would find that the music she loved so dearly would bring her opportunities she had never dreamed possible. Moments that would change her life forever. One day, an unexpected opportunity arrived that would change everything. The girl had been practicing as usual, fingers gliding over the piano keys, when a neighbor burst into her apartment with excitement. A local music festival was looking for young talent, and they were holding auditions at a nearby community hall. The neighbor insisted she go, telling her that her music needed to be heard. At first, she hesitated. The thought of performing in front of strangers was frightening. She was used to the quiet of her apartment, the soft hum of the piano, the familiar sounds of her neighborhood. But her mother encouraged her gently, reminding her that this could be the chance she had been waiting for. With a mixture of fear and excitement, she agreed. The morning of the audition, she carried her sheet music carefully, her small fingers brushing over the pages as if drawing strength from them. Her mother walked with her to the community hall, holding her hand tightly and whispering words of reassurance. The hall was buzzing with energy, filled with children and teenagers from all over the city, some with expensive instruments, some in elegant clothes, all seemingly confident and ready to perform. She felt a wave of nervousness but focused on the piano, imagining it as a friend rather than a stranger in the room. When it was her turn, she approached the piano, her hands trembling slightly. The audience was larger than anything she had ever faced, and she could feel the eyes of the judges on her. But as soon as her fingers touched the keys, the fear melted away. The first notes rang out clear and bright, carrying the emotion she felt deep inside. The music flowed effortlessly, telling a story of her life, her struggles, her dreams, and her hopes. It was as if the piano and her were connected in a way that went beyond practice and technique. Every note was filled with passion, every melody a reflection of her journey. People in the audience were captivated. Some leaned forward, their eyes wide with surprise, unable to look away. Others held their breath, feeling the intensity of the music in their hearts. Even the judges, experienced musicians and educators, exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that they were witnessing something extraordinary. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. She looked up, startled by the reaction, and saw the smiles of strangers who had been touched by her music. For the first time, she realized that her talent could reach beyond her apartment, beyond the small world she had always known. Among the audience were several well-known musicians who had come to watch the festival. They were immediately drawn to her performance, amazed by the emotion, control, and creativity she displayed. One of them approached her after the performance, complimenting her skill and offering advice. He spoke gently, encouraging her to continue practicing, to take lessons with experienced teachers, and to consider performing in larger venues. The girl listened carefully, absorbing every word, realizing that the world she had only dreamed of might now be within reach. Her mother watched with tears in her eyes, overwhelmed with pride and relief. She had always known her daughter had a special gift, but seeing it recognized by professionals was a moment she could hardly believe. She embraced her daughter, whispering words of love and encouragement, promising to support her in every way possible. The girl felt a mixture of emotions: joy, disbelief, excitement, and a growing sense of responsibility. She understood that this was a turning point, the beginning of a new chapter in her life. After the festival, the attention she received grew. Teachers, musicians, and community members offered guidance, invitations, and opportunities. She began attending more formal lessons, learning advanced techniques, music theory, and composition. She adapted quickly, absorbing knowledge with the same dedication she had shown in teaching herself. Her music became more refined, yet it never lost the raw emotion that had first captured the hearts of those who heard her play. She found a balance between technical skill and expressive power, understanding that both were necessary to reach her full potential. The girl also started to perform at small concerts and local events, gaining confidence in front of audiences. Each performance brought new experiences, meeting people, hearing feedback, and understanding how her music affected others. She learned to listen, to adapt, and to connect with her audience. She began to understand that music was not just about playing notes correctly, but about telling a story, sharing emotions, and creating a shared experience. Her performances were not perfect, but they were real, honest, and moving, qualities that drew people to her time and time again. Despite the growing attention, she remained humble and grounded. She never forgot the apartment where she had practiced in secret, the small keyboard that had first introduced her to music, or her mother's unwavering support. She continued to practice diligently, often late into the night, honing her skills and creating new compositions. Each new piece was a reflection of her life, a story she wanted to share with the world. She experimented with different styles, blending classical, contemporary, and folk elements, creating a sound that was uniquely hers. Her creativity and dedication became the foundation of her growing reputation. Along the way, she faced challenges and obstacles. Not everyone understood her ambition, and some people doubted her potential. There were moments of frustration, when a difficult passage on the piano seemed impossible, or when a performance didn't go as planned. But she learned to persevere, using setbacks as lessons rather than failures. She discovered that resilience was just as important as talent, and that determination, patience, and hard work were essential to achieving her goals. Her mother continued to be her anchor, offering encouragement, perspective, and love, reminding her that every challenge was a step toward growth. One afternoon, she was invited to a prestigious music workshop, where young talents could work with famous musicians. The opportunity was both exciting and intimidating. She traveled with her mother, carrying her music and her dreams, unsure of what to expect. The workshop was filled with talented students from around the world, each with their own style and skill. For a moment, she felt out of place, overwhelmed by the scale of talent and the level of competition. But as soon as she began to play, she felt the familiar connection with the piano, the music flowing effortlessly and naturally. Her performance left a lasting impression on the instructors, who praised her creativity, expressiveness, and unique voice. After the workshop, several of the musicians approached her, offering mentorship and guidance. They spoke about opportunities to perform on larger stages, to participate in competitions, and to collaborate with other talented artists. She listened intently, absorbing every word, imagining a future she had only dreamed of. The idea that her music could reach far beyond her neighborhood, beyond her small apartment, became real and tangible. She felt a sense of responsibility to continue growing, to honor the gift she had been given, and to make the most of every opportunity. As her skills developed, so did her confidence. She learned to trust her instincts, to take risks in her compositions, and to explore new ways of expressing herself through music. She began to compose longer, more complex pieces, experimenting with harmonies, rhythms, and textures. Each new composition reflected her experiences, emotions, and imagination, creating a body of work that was deeply personal and authentic. Her music began to attract attention not only from teachers and mentors, but also from audiences, who were drawn to the honesty and emotion in every note. Back at home, life had changed but not completely. Her mother still worked long hours, and they continued to live modestly. But the piano had become more than an instrument. It was a bridge to a future filled with possibilities. Each day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new moments of joy. The girl understood that her journey was just beginning, and that the piano was the key to unlocking the potential that had always been inside her. One evening, after a long day of practice and lessons, she sat at the piano and reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the quiet hours spent learning by ear, the encouragement of her mother, the moments of fear and doubt, and the opportunities that had begun to open before her. She realized that every step, no matter how small, had led her to this moment. The music she played now was richer, deeper, and more expressive than ever, carrying the story of her life and the promise of what was to come. She knew that the path ahead would not always be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had something unique, a talent and a voice that could touch people in ways words never could. And with every note she played, with every melody she composed, she felt herself moving closer to a future filled with music, recognition, and the opportunity to share her gift with the world. This was the moment where her quiet practice in a small apartment had blossomed into something powerful, something that could no longer be contained, something that would soon reach far beyond the walls that had nurtured it. The girl's life began to change rapidly after her recognition at the music festival and the workshop. Opportunities she had only imagined started to appear before her. Invitations to perform at local events became more frequent, and she was approached by music schools and professionals who wanted to guide her talent. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. The world she had known, the small apartment, the familiar neighborhood, the quiet afternoons at the piano, was expanding into a world filled with unknown challenges and promises. Her mother continued to be her anchor, supporting her every step of the way. She rearranged her work schedule to ensure her daughter could attend lessons and performances, and she offered guidance and encouragement when her daughter felt overwhelmed. Though they still lived modestly, the home was filled with hope and the quiet confidence that her daughter's talent could open doors they had never dreamed possible. Each evening, after long days of practice or performance, the girl would sit at the piano, reflecting on the experiences of the day, letting the music carry away her worries and fears, preparing her for the journey ahead. The first major performance she was invited to was at a community gala attended by prominent musicians and local celebrities. Her mother accompanied her, holding her hand as they entered the hall. The sight of the grand piano, the bright lights, and the large audience made her nervous, but she reminded herself of the countless hours she had spent practicing alone. She had worked tirelessly, honing every note and every passage, and now it was time to share her music with a larger audience. As she approached the piano, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation and the thrill of possibility. Once her fingers touched the keys, all anxiety melted away. The first notes were confident and clear, echoing through the hall with a purity that captivated the audience. She played with emotion and precision, every melody expressing her story, the struggles, the dreams, and the love she had experienced throughout her life. People listened intently, some closing their eyes, others leaning forward in their seats, fully absorbed in the music. Even the most experienced musicians in attendance were moved, exchanging glances of admiration and disbelief. The performance was more than music. It was a living expression of her journey, and the audience felt every note. After the performance, she was approached by several well-known musicians and industry professionals. They praised her skill, her expression, and her unique approach to music. One suggested that she consider recording her compositions professionally, while another offered guidance on how to refine her technique further. She listened attentively, absorbing every word and imagining the possibilities. Her mother watched silently, proud and emotional, knowing that the opportunities her daughter had dreamed of were finally becoming real. The moment felt surreal, as though the small apartment where she had practiced in secret was worlds away from the bright lights and applause of the gala. As her reputation grew, she began receiving invitations to perform at more prestigious events. She was introduced to mentors who had trained some of the most successful musicians in the country. Each lesson, each rehearsal, each performance helped her grow not only as a pianist but as a person. She learned to handle pressure, to adapt to different audiences, and to express herself through music in ways she had never imagined. Her talent continued to evolve, becoming richer, more nuanced, and more compelling, as she blended technical mastery with heartfelt emotion. The girl also began to understand the importance of networking and building relationships within the music community. She met fellow young musicians, sharing experiences, learning from each other, and forming friendships that would last throughout her career. These connections provided inspiration, support, and healthy competition, motivating her to push herself further. She began to see that talent alone was not enough. It required dedication, collaboration, and a willingness to learn from others. Each encounter, each shared note, and each piece of advice became a stepping stone toward achieving her dreams. Despite the growing recognition, she remained humble and grounded. She never forgot the apartment where she had learned to play, the small keyboard that had first introduced her to music, or the quiet encouragement of her mother. She continued to practice diligently, often late into the night, striving to improve and refine her skills. She composed new pieces, experimenting with different styles and themes, and shared them with her mentors for feedback. Each composition was a reflection of her experiences, emotions, and dreams, capturing the essence of her journey and the authenticity of her voice. Her family and neighbors began to take notice of the transformation in her life. People who had known her as a quiet, hardworking child were amazed at her talent and the recognition she was receiving. Some neighbors offered words of encouragement, sharing in her achievements, while others watched in awe as she performed in increasingly larger venues. Her mother remained a constant presence, attending every performance she could, offering support and reminding her to stay true to herself. The bond between them grew stronger, rooted in love, trust, and shared dreams. As her career began to take shape, she faced new challenges. The pressure of performing in front of larger audiences, meeting expectations, and managing her time between lessons, practice, and school could be overwhelming. There were moments of doubt and fatigue, times when she questioned her abilities and wondered if she could continue. But each challenge was met with determination and resilience. She reminded herself of how far she had come, of the countless hours spent practicing, and of the support of her mother. These reminders gave her strength, allowing her to push forward with renewed focus and energy. One of the most significant opportunities came when she was invited to participate in a televised music competition for young talents. The stakes were high, and the pressure was intense, but she saw it as a chance to reach a wider audience and share her music with the world. The preparation was grueling, involving long hours of practice, refining every piece, and learning how to perform under scrutiny. Her mother supported her through every step, offering encouragement, helping with logistics, and providing comfort when nerves threatened to overwhelm her. The experience taught her valuable lessons about discipline, perseverance, and the importance of staying true to her artistic vision. During the competition, she faced talented participants from across the country, each bringing their own style and creativity. When it was her turn, she focused solely on the music, letting her emotions guide her fingers across the keys. The performance was electrifying, filled with energy, passion, and the authenticity that had always defined her playing. The audience responded enthusiastically, and the judges praised her originality, technical skill, and emotional depth. For the first time, she realized that her music could touch people far beyond her local community, reaching hearts and minds she had never imagined. Her success in the competition opened doors to new opportunities. She was invited to perform at prestigious events, collaborate with well-known musicians, and even record her compositions professionally. Each opportunity brought excitement, growth, and the realization that her dreams were becoming reality. She remained humble, however, remembering the small apartment, the quiet hours of practice, and the unwavering support of her mother that had made all of this possible. Her journey was not just about fame or recognition. It was about sharing her music, expressing her story, and inspiring others through her talent. As her life transformed, she also began to give back to her community. She visited local schools, sharing her experiences and encouraging young children to pursue their passions, no matter their circumstances. She understood the power of encouragement and mentorship, and she wanted to provide the same support she had received. Her music became a tool not only for personal growth but for inspiring others, showing that dedication, hard work, and belief in oneself could overcome challenges and open doors to extraordinary possibilities. Even with all the changes and opportunities, she continued to find joy in the simple act of playing the piano. Each note, each melody, was a reminder of her journey. The long hours of practice, the quiet determination, and the love that had nurtured her talent. She played not for fame or accolades, but because music was an essential part of who she was. It was a reflection of her heart, a language through which she could express what words could not, and a bridge to the future she had always dreamed of. Through these experiences, she learned that talent alone was not enough. Success required perseverance, humility, and a willingness to learn from every opportunity. She faced challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but each was met with resilience and determination. Her mother remained by her side, a constant source of encouragement and love, reminding her that every step forward was a testament to their shared journey and the power of dreams pursued with dedication. By the end of this chapter in her life, the girl had grown not only as a musician but as a person. She had experienced the transformative power of music, the importance of mentorship, and the impact of perseverance. Her talent had brought her recognition and opportunity, but it was her dedication, authenticity, and resilience that ensured her continued growth and success. The piano, once a quiet companion in a small apartment, had become the key to a life filled with possibility, inspiration, and the chance to touch the hearts of many. She was ready for the next stage of her journey, knowing that the best was still to come, and that her music would continue to open doors and create connections she had never imagined. With each performance and opportunity, the girl's confidence grew, but she never lost the humility and gratitude that had carried her from the very beginning. She understood that her talent was a gift, and she honored it through dedication, persistence, and the joy she found in every note she played. As she matured, she began to travel to larger cities, performing on stages she had once only seen in her dreams. The first time she walked into a grand concert hall, she was struck by the scale and the grandeur. Yet the moment her fingers touched the keys, it all became familiar again. Music was her home, her language, and her comfort, regardless of the size of the room or the number of eyes watching. Her mother accompanied her whenever possible, proud to see how far her daughter had come while remaining the steady foundation of support. Each city, each stage, each audience was a new chapter, filled with new lessons and experiences. She met musicians from different backgrounds, learning new techniques, styles, and ways to express emotion through music. These encounters expanded her vision, helping her understand that music could transcend language, culture, and circumstance. Each new collaboration was a chance to grow, to share her voice, and to contribute something meaningful to the world. Despite her rising fame, she remained grounded in the values her mother had instilled in her. She never forgot the small apartment where she had begun, the modest piano that had sparked her journey, and the quiet encouragement that had kept her going through challenging times. Her performances were not about impressing others or seeking validation. They were about expressing her story, her emotions, and her experiences through music. She approached each piece with sincerity, understanding that the authenticity of her performance was what truly connected with audiences. As her reputation grew, she began to receive invitations from famous artists to collaborate. Initially, the thought was intimidating. These were musicians she had admired from afar, whose work had inspired her during long nights of practice. Yet, when she met them, she discovered that they were not only talented but also generous and supportive. They offered guidance, shared stories of their own journeys, and encouraged her to take risks with her music. These collaborations challenged her, pushing her to experiment, to innovate, and to grow as an artist. Each new project became a milestone, a step forward in her evolving career. With success came challenges as well. She faced demanding schedules, long rehearsals, and the constant pressure to perform at her best. There were days when fatigue and doubt crept in, when the weight of expectation seemed too heavy. But she remembered the countless hours spent learning in her small apartment, the perseverance that had brought her this far, and the unwavering support of her mother. These memories fueled her resilience, reminding her that every challenge was part of the journey and every difficulty an opportunity to strengthen her craft. She also began to inspire others through her story. Young musicians from modest backgrounds saw in her a reflection of their own dreams and ambitions. She was invited to speak at schools, workshops, and community events, sharing her experiences and encouraging others to pursue their passions despite obstacles. She emphasized the importance of dedication, resilience, and authenticity, showing that talent combined with hard work could open doors that once seemed impossible. Her story became a source of hope, motivating countless individuals to chase their dreams with courage and commitment. As her career advanced, she continued to compose her own music, blending her experiences, emotions, and imagination into pieces that were uniquely hers. Her compositions explored a wide range of styles, from classical to contemporary, each carrying the depth of her journey and the sincerity of her expression. Audiences were drawn not only to her technical skill but also to the honesty and emotion conveyed in every performance. Her music became a bridge between her personal experiences and the hearts of those who listened, creating connections that transcended words. One of the defining moments of her career came when she was invited to perform at an international music festival. The scale of the event was unlike anything she had encountered, with audiences from around the world and renowned musicians in attendance. As she stepped onto the stage, she felt a mix of excitement, nervousness, and determination. The first notes of her performance were met with immediate attention, and as the music flowed, she saw the faces of the audience light up with emotion. The experience was both humbling and empowering, reinforcing her belief in the power of music to touch lives and unite people across cultures. Throughout her journey, her mother remained a constant presence, offering love, encouragement, and perspective. They often reflected on how far they had come, from the small apartment and the modest piano to international stages and recognition. Yet, they both understood that the true value of her journey lay not in fame or accolades, but in the dedication, growth, and connection that music had brought into their lives. The bond between them deepened, strengthened by shared dreams, sacrifices, and the joy of witnessing talent nurtured and realized. Even as she experienced success, she never became complacent. She continued to practice diligently, refine her technique, and explore new avenues of musical expression. She sought out mentors, collaborated with peers, and immersed herself in learning from every possible source. Her commitment to growth ensured that her performances remained fresh, authentic, and captivating. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of hard work, humility, and passion that allowed her to flourish as an artist. Her story also emphasized the importance of gratitude. She never took her opportunities for granted and made sure to acknowledge the people and moments that had shaped her journey. From the quiet support of her mother to the encouragement of neighbors and mentors, she recognized that her success was built on a foundation of collective support and shared belief. Each performance, each composition, and each achievement was a testament not only to her talent, but to the community that had nurtured her along the way. In time, she became a symbol of possibility, showing that extraordinary talent could emerge from the most modest beginnings. Her journey inspired countless young musicians to believe in themselves, work hard, and pursue their passions relentlessly. She often reminded others that the key to success was not instant recognition but persistent effort, learning from mistakes, and maintaining authenticity in every endeavor. Through her story, she highlighted the power of resilience, hope, and the transformative impact of support and encouragement. As her career continued to flourish, she remained deeply connected to her roots. She frequently returned to her old neighborhood, visiting her first teachers, mentors, and the places that had nurtured her early talent. These visits grounded her, reminding her of the journey she had undertaken and the importance of staying humble and true to herself. She often played for local audiences, sharing her gift with those who had first believed in her and reinforcing the idea that music was a gift meant to be shared. Her compositions became widely recognized, performed by other musicians, and celebrated for their emotional depth and originality. She collaborated on projects that spanned genres and continents, contributing to a growing body of work that reflected both her personal journey and the universal language of music. Each new endeavor was approached with curiosity, dedication, and an openness to learning, ensuring that her artistry continued to evolve and resonate with audiences worldwide. Even with recognition and success, she found joy in the simple act of playing the piano. Late at night, in quiet moments, she would sit at the keys, letting the music flow freely, recalling the first melodies she had played in her small apartment. These moments were a reminder of her beginnings, the dedication that had brought her this far, and the love and support that had shaped her path. Music remained her sanctuary, her expression, and the essence of who she was. Ultimately, her journey became a story of transformation, resilience, and inspiration. From a quiet girl with a modest piano and dreams that seemed distant, she emerged as a celebrated musician whose talent touched hearts and inspired countless others. She showed that dedication, humility, and authenticity could overcome obstacles, and that passion combined with support and opportunity could create extraordinary outcomes. Her life had changed, but the essence of who she was, a dedicated, passionate, and humble musician, remained intact. Her story closed the chapter on her early journey, but it also opened new ones, filled with opportunities, collaborations, and experiences that would continue to shape her music and her life. The piano, which had once been a modest instrument in a small apartment, had become the key to a life filled with expression, connection, and possibility. And as she played each note, she carried with her the memories, the struggles, and the dreams that had brought her to this remarkable point, knowing that the music she loved and nurtured would continue to guide her, inspire others, and create beauty in the world for years to come.